In this video, we're going to show you how to install a control arm on your Toyota Tundra located in the upper front portion of the suspension. Using a 21mm socket, let's loosen and remove our lug nuts. Now that you have your lug nuts removed, grab that wheel, remove it, and set it aside. With the front wheel off, we're going to come to the upper control arm right here, and there is a pin or a cotter pin type clip. Just going to use your pliers, lift up on that back section here, pull that up and out, and pull this out like so. Using an 18mm socket, we want to go ahead and loosen the upper control arm nut here. Now what we're going to do is we want to leave this partially attached. We're going to bring it up a little bit higher. We're going to use this nut as a capture nut while we separate the control arm from the ball joint. We're going to use a hammer to strike the upper control arm here. Hopefully that will release our ball joint. Do this while wearing safety glasses. You can see that the control arm had popped up and is now tied up against the nut. Before we remove this here, we want to go ahead and position over to our horizontal bolt here for the upper control arm. Using a 19mm box end wrench, we're going to put that on the nut side, on the forward nut side. And then we're going to use a 19mm on the bolt side on our impact with our swivel. So on our upper bolt here, we ended up heating up the nut on this here. We use our breaker bar on the bolt side, and we're gonna continue to do this, periodically spraying some rust penetrant on the nut and the bolt area and loosening this way here. We're able to get the nut off here. Now, if you did use heat, do not grab the big washer there. You're going to regret that. Before we try and remove that bolt, our next thing we want to do is we want to separate our ABS wire from the control arm here. There's a 10mm bolt on top holding that. We let this soak in some rust penetrant. That's why we didn't take this off first. So at this point, loosen and remove that bolt. All right, remove that bolt. Pull it up. We have our 10mm bolt right here holding the bracket for our ABS wire. We went ahead and we had to heat this up a little bit due to the rust on the vehicle. If you are using heat, please stay away from the wire harness here as well as the ball joint in the boot. Be careful with that. Go ahead and slide that off. Now that we have our ABS wire free, let's go ahead and focus on the bolt side here. We want to go ahead and use our ratchet. And our bolt is spinning freely. Got to remove that large washer. Now if you notice that your washer itself has a raised side, that is going to go towards the control arm itself, and the dish side faces outward. And we're working this out. Our upper control arm bolt is coming free. Before we pull this up completely, I'm now going to come over here. We're going to refocus over here. removing this nut, and we're going to allow the control arm to come up. Please be prepared that the knuckle itself is going to be free floating, so you want to go ahead and have a securing strap ready to go, or go ahead and pre-support that now. How is that going to look? Well, you can hook your securing strap somewhere on the frame. You can wrap it around the unit itself, depending on the size of the strap that you have. Now our goal here is just to not allow this knuckle to pull away, and that would cause undue stress on our CV axle, so we want to keep that from happening. Remove the upper nut. And we're just going to hold that knuckle here, and we're going to give this a couple whacks. We know that this is now free. There we have it. At this point, let's go ahead and refocus to the bolt on the back side. I'm going to go ahead and use that trim tool and pop out this little splash shield here. And we can see right here, there's a retainer for this line. And if we pull this bolt back, you can see that it interferes there. So we're going to use our trim tool. We want to go ahead and release this from the bracket. Now our bracket is extremely rusty. If yours is, it's not the end of the world. But if you can release that, and then we're going to release the line from the clip itself. There we go. We have it released from the unit. All I'm going to do is slide it up. When you're sliding this back, make sure you're moving that washer. Get that out of the way. Slide this back. Get your bolt out. Grab that control arm and wiggle that out. Let's go ahead and line up your control arm. Now we went ahead and we cleaned up our bolt on our wire wheel machine, and we put some anti-seize compound on there. So just position this. Get that bolt lined up, feed that in. Install your washer. Install the nut. We're going to go ahead and line up our knuckle with the control arm. Once you have the nut on here and our bolt in, we can now remove our securing strap. Set that aside. We want to snug down our ball joint nut here. We need to torque this to 76 foot-pounds. Now the next thing we want to do is, with it torqued, you're going to try and locate the hole in the ball joint stud and line it up with a notch in the castle nut. That way there we can reinstall our clip. Now, for any reason, if the notch in the castle nut does not line up, you want to go ahead and continue to turn the castle nut until a notch lines up with the hole. Never loosen the nut for it to line up. You want to go ahead and tighten it just a little bit more. Now, in our case here, it lines up. Press it in, snap it into place. In the back here, we'll go ahead and bring our clip down into place. I'm going to push that back into the bracket. Install your splash shield. Now ours didn't have many clips holding it. They probably tore out or fell out or whatever it was. We're just going to pop that up in place and tuck that back up like so. And grab that bracket for your ABS wire. Install the bolts. I'm going to spin that in as far as I can by hand, and then we'll come back with our ratchet and we'll snug that down gently. Once it bottoms out, just give it a little bit more. And then let's go ahead and install our bracket to our upper control arm right up top here. Go ahead and line up that bracket on top. Install your bolt. We opted for a new bolt to go into our new control arm. You can use the original bolt if you want to. And once it bottoms out, just give it a little bit more just to snug it. Now at this point here, before we torque our horizontal bolt for the upper control arm, we need to compress our suspension into what we call a neutral ride height. This means is if you had the wheels on the vehicle and the weight was on the ground, it would compress the suspension to a neutral ride height. We're going to use our jack to replicate that. You can put it underneath the control arm. And we're going to compress our suspension. You can see the upper control arm moving upward. And when that stops, it's going to lift the vehicle, and that is going to be our neutral ride height. And that's it right there. The vehicle started to lift. We're going to torque this to 72 foot-pounds. With that torque in a position, we can now lower our jack. At this point, we can install our wheel. Be sure that any time you replace a suspension component, you want to go ahead and bring the vehicle down and get an alignment performed on that vehicle. Take your wheel, line it up. Let's go ahead and install our lug nuts. Once we get all these started, we're going to go ahead and snug them down. Torque down your lug nuts to 83 foot-pounds. We're going to do this in a crisscross pattern.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.